بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. Last time we stopped off at al-Mursal on line 16. ومرسل منه الصحابي سقط وقل غريبا غريب ما روى راو فقط. So the Mursal Hadith, we already touched upon it briefly. The Mursal Hadith is the one in which the narrator next to the Prophet ﷺ is omitted. Now, usually it is only the Sahabi. However, on some occasions it can be the Sahabi and other people. So if we have, let's see here, we have the Prophet ﷺ here, and we have a Sahabi after him, and we have a Tabi'i after him, and we have a Tabi'i after him, and just put someone after the Tabi'i. So the order goes that the final one should narrate from the Tabi'i, and he should narrate from the Tabi'i, and he should narrate from the Sahabi, and he should narrate from the Prophet ﷺ. A Mursal Hadith is one in which the final narrator before the end is omitted. So, for example, a Tabi'i saying, the Prophet ﷺ said, he doesn't mention which Sahabi he heard it from. And so, the chain of narration would go like this. The final one would narrate from the Tabi'i, and he would narrate from the Tabi'i, and he would narrate from the Prophet ﷺ directly, and the Sahabi is not mentioned. Now, as I said, usually it is only the Sahabi. However, sometimes more people can be omitted. Sometimes the Tabi'i can not only omit the Sahabi, but also omit the Tabi'i. So he omits 2 generations, or 3, or 4. Realistically, 99% of the times it happens, it's only the Sahabi. But just to be clear on what the definition is that any narrator, the narrators next to the Prophet ﷺ, if they are omitted, it is called Mursal. Now, a Mursal Hadith is a very common type of Hadith. And so it is very important to know the rulings related to it and how it's been used by the ulama. Mursal Hadith are very common. Now, according to the Shafi'is, generally speaking, and most people, including the author, according to most, a Mursal Hadith is considered weak. But as we said, the books of Mustalah, the texts of Mustalah, including this one, are Shafi'i biased. And the truth is, when you look at earlier ulama, including Imam Malik, including Imam Abu Hanifa, and many others, they do not consider Mursal to be a weakness. Why is this the case? Because if the Tabi'i omits the Sahabi, that's not a weakness because all of the Sahaba are reliable. So it doesn't matter if the Tabi'i heard it from Umar ibn Khattab, or if he heard it from Ibn Abbas, or if he heard it from Ubay ibn Ka'b. We don't need to know the Sahabi to know that the chain is reliable, because no matter which Sahabi is there, we know that all of the Sahaba are hudud, all of them are trusted in their faith and their religion and their honesty. And so that's why many of the fuqaha consider a Mursal Hadith to be strong. They don't consider it to be weak. And in the Muwatta of Imam Malik, plenty of Mursal Hadith. Now, why do the scholars, such as the Tabi'een and people before them, why do they narrate it Mursal? Why don't they just narrate who the Sahabi is and make life easier for everyone? There's many reasons it could happen. Sometimes a Tabi'i would omit the Sahabi due to just being in a rush. He's not in a hadith council. He's just trying to relay the hadith quite quickly uh, because of the context in which he is in. He sees something related to the hadith, so he just says the hadith. He says the Prophet ﷺ said. He doesn't mention who he heard it from because he doesn't see it relevant at the time. Other times, the Sahabi could be omitted because he heard it from multiple Sahabi. So instead of just listing all of the Sahaba he heard it from, instead of listing them all, he just says the Prophet ﷺ said. Other times, it could be due to forgetfulness. He knows he heard it from a Sahabi, but he's not sure which one it was. So there's many, many reasons why a hadith could be mursal. And the evidence for the existence of many reasons is how common a mursal hadith is. When you look at the books of hadith and see how common it is, you will understand and you will believe that there are so many reasons a hadith could be mursal. Now, is it technically possible for a tabi'i to narrate from another tabi'i who narrates from a sahabi? Yes, it's possible. The same way a sahabi could narrate from a sahabi. For example, the Prophet ﷺ could say something to Umar ibn al-Khattab, and Umar ibn al-Khattab could narrate it to Abu Bakr, and Abu Bakr can narrate it to Ibn Abbas, and then it's narrated by a tabi'i, such as al-Hasan al-Basri. So this is one of the reasons a Shafi'i considers mursal hadith to be weak. Just because it's common for the Sahabi to be omitted, it doesn't mean we can't assume there's only one person being omitted. So I'm going to keep this here. Let's draw another thing. The Prophet ﷺ says something, and the Sahabi narrates it, and then a tabi'i narrates it, and he tells it to another tabi'i, and then he tells it to a tabi'i, and then finally the last. And then the final, which is the generation after that. G3. So if a tabi'i omits the tabi'i and the sahabi and he goes to the Prophet ﷺ directly. If you look at these two, if you look at the red here and you look at the blue here, the chain of narration appears to be identical. In both cases, it appears to the people on the other side, it appears to them that he's just omitting the sahabi, because that's the logical, common scenario, that he's only omitting the sahabi. But in truth, he could have heard it from another tabi'i who heard it from a sahabi. And therefore, we don't know in truth, when a hadith is mursal, we don't know in truth how many people are being omitted. Yes, this is the most common scenario. It's just one sahabi. This is the vast majority of cases, but this is possible. And while the Sahaba are all trustworthy and reliable, there are people in the Tabi'i generation who are not reliable, because after the Sahaba, that's when the innovation started to begin. There are people who lived amongst the Tabi'in who were not reliable. Now, obviously, we don't call them Tabi'in. When we say the word Tabi'in, Tabi'in, we're usually referring to the good people. So, an innovator such as Wasil ibn Ata, for example, who was the first Mu'tazili, he's from the generation of the Tabi'in, but we don't call him a Tabi'in. Or generally speaking, we won't call him a Tabi'i, even though it's technically correct. So it's possible for people in the Tabi'i generation here to be unreliable. And that's the argument for weakening Mursal Ahadith. That we can't assume the Tabi'i heard it from a Sahabi. There could be someone unreliable in the middle. And if we had time, if we had more time than we do have now, we could go into some examples, some actual chains of narrations of Mursal Hadith, and we can show some problems that exist in some of them and how it had led to confusion during the times of the Salaf, and how the Muhaddithin pointed out these problems and organized them and wrote about them and preserved the Sunnah from such confusion. But the fact of the matter remains is that despite these objections, even though this is a real scenario and it's a real objection, despite this, most imams still they still claim and they still act upon mursal ahadith. They still consider them strong. They don't consider it being mursal a weakness just for itself. And they narrate them and they use them as evidence. And there's much more to go into mursal. Sometimes there's something called mursal khafi, which is hidden mursal, which is when a hadith, it's similar to this, is when the hadith appears to be only omitting one generation, but it's actually omitting two. Or when it's appearing to omit no generations, but it's actually omitting one. So there are many examples of the different categories of al-mursal. The first one we gave covers at least 90% of mursal hadith. This is the vast majority of them. And this is the important one to know. When someone just says mursal without any context, this is what your mind should go to, this first one. This is what we use it for almost all of the time. And that's it for mursal for now. وَقُلْ غَرِيبٌ مَا رَوَى رَاوٍ فَقَطْ. Yesterday, or before that, yesterday, we defined the gharib hadith, the aziz hadith, and the mashhur hadith. And we said that the gharib hadith is what is limited to one narrator, either in all of the chain or in at least one generation. If there's any generation of narrators in which there's only one person narrating that hadith, then it's called a gharib hadith. And we won't go into detail because we already went into detail yesterday when we discussed it. وَكُلُّ مَا لَمْ يَتَّصِلْ بِحَالٍ إِسْنَادُهُ مُنْقَطِعُ الْأَوْصَالِ. Now, a mursal hadith is a disconnect. A mursal hadith is a disconnect that is next to the Prophet ﷺ. We said these the annotations are annoying. We said that the mursal hadith is which the narrators next to the Prophet ﷺ are not mentioned. In truth, there are many other types of disconnects. So, if I narrate it from the beginning and I miss the first narrator beside me, this is called mu'allaq. I've omitted this narrator. If I narrate everyone except the Sahabi, then this is a mursal hadith. If I, miss one person or two people in the middle, so I miss T3, T2, and T2, that's also a disconnect. So, وَكُلُّ مَا لَمْ يَتَّصِلْ بِحَالٍ إِسْنَادُهُ مُنْقَطِعُ الْأَوْصَالِ. Any form of disconnect, whether it's in the beginning or the end or the middle, whether it's one narrator that's been omitted, whether it's two or three, any form of omission is called munqati'. قطع, it's to cut. It means there's something missing. It's something cut in the middle. And we defined a few classes ago the muttasil. Whatever is connected from the beginning to the end is muttasil. Whether it's sahih, gharib, aziz, whatever its strength is, anything that is connected is called muttasil. And this is the opposite. Anything that has any form of disconnect in the beginning, in the end, it is called munqati'. And so it is a general one in which there are specific ones. So we just mentioned the mursal hadith. We said the mursal hadith is specifically one which the omission is beside the Prophet ﷺ. So the mursal is a type of munqati', because the munqati' includes all forms of disconnected hadith, and the mursal is a specific type of disconnect. So the mursal is munqati', but the munqati' does not have to be mursal, because the munqati' could have a disconnect somewhere else. It doesn't have to be the Sahaba. Any form of disconnect is called munqati'. طيب. والمعضل الساقط منه اثنان وما أتى مدلسا نوعان. The next, another type of disconnect is the mu'adal. The mu'dal is one in which two narrators are missed consecutively, meaning they have to be beside each other. So uh, if I narrate from the Prophet ﷺ and I miss the Sahabi and the Tabi'i and the Tabi'i narrates and he omits two consecutively. So he omits the Sahabi and the Tabi'i. If they're both omitted, then it's called mu'dal. However, if I have two people omitted, but they're not next to each other, uh, so if I have the tabi'i omitted, and then I have the sahabi omitted, so this is one omission and two omission. We don't call this mu'dal. We say this is munqata' in two different places. It's disconnected in two different places. A mu'dal hadith is one in which two omissions, so this one above, it's when two omissions are beside each other. So two generations next to each other in the chain of narration are omitted together. That's called al-mu'dal. And it's also a type of munqata'. So every mu'dal is munqata', but not every munqata' is mu'dal. وما أتى مدلسا نوعان. We did touch upon tadlis in one of the classes. Tadlis is one in which something is purposely hidden. We mentioned that somebody could omit his sheikh and narrate from his sheikh's sheikh, and he says عن Sheikh Fulan. So he narrates from him in a way in which he makes it seem as if he spoke to him directly. So we have the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahabi and the Tabi'i, and then Tabi'i, and then the final generation. T3 here, the final generation. His sheikh, the Tabi'i, this sheikh could be a weak narrator. He could be known for having bad memory. And so T3 here, let's just call him me. This is me. I don't want the hadith I narrate to be rejected because my sheikh is weak. So instead of saying حدثني التابعي عن التابعي, I just say عن التابعي قال حدثنا الصحابي عن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. So I don't make it obvious that I've heard the hadith from him. I try to make it seem as if he told me, but without actually lying. I don't say حدثني التابعي. I don't say the tabi'i spoke to me or I heard the tabi'i. I just say from the tabi'i. Now, if I say the tabi'i spoke to me, then I'm lying and the hadith is mawdu', it's fabricated. So this is something called mudallas, which is hidden. And it's not lying, it's twisting words. And most of the scholars have said this is something which is haram to do. But regardless, it exists and it's something that they have to deal with. I said this is me. I say that from the tabi'i, عن التابعي, I hide the fact that he didn't speak to me directly. I don't say he spoke to me, but I hide the fact that he didn't speak to me. This is called tadlis. And there are two types of tadlis. The first one is called tadlis al-sanad or tadlis al-isnad, and the second one is tadlis al-shuyukh. This one we just spoke about, the one I just showed you, it's called tadlis al-sanad, hiding the sanad. الأول الإسقاط للشيخ وأن ينقل عمن فوقه بعن وأن. أن ينقل عمن فوقه بعن وأن. So to narrate from someone above him using the word an, which is, as I explained in the example, I'm narrating from someone above me using the word an, and by doing that, I am hiding my sheikh. The second form of tadlis is to hide to hide the identity of my sheikh by not actually saying who he is. والثاني لا يسقطه لكن يصف أوصافه بما لا ينعرف. So he doesn't omit his sheikh. However, he describes him with descriptions that won't identify him. So for example, my sheikh here is uh, he's from Basra. So I say حدثني البصري عن فلان عن الصحابي عن رسول الله. So I say the man from Basra told me that so and so told him that the Sahabi told him, etc. And by doing this, I'm not omitting my sheikh, but I'm describing him with descriptions that nobody's going to know exactly who he is. Who's al-Basri? There's multiple men from Basra. And people used to do this. There's an example of people doing this with Abu Hanifa radiallahu anhu, because Abu Hanifa during his life was not very well liked by some people, especially in the Sham region, the Syrian region. And so some of his students would say, حدثنا al-Kufi. So the Kufan man spoke to us because Abu Hanifa is from Kufa. So instead of just saying Abu Hanifa told us, they just say al-Kufi حدثنا. And by doing that, they know that their hadith won't be rejected because because the Shamis dislike Abu Hanifa. And so when the Shamis see this sanad, this chain of narration, they're not going to know that the Kufi is Abu Hanifa because the Kufi could be anyone else. And so they narrate his hadith. And this is what we call tadlis al-shuyukh. It's to hide the narration. Another way to do it would to say, for example, حدثني Abu Abdullah. Abu Abdullah spoke to me. Who is Abu Abdullah? There's a million Abu Abdullahs. You know, حدثني Ibn Muhammad. The son of Muhammad spoke to me. There's many people called Ibn Muhammad. Now the hadith masters later on, when they look at these asanid, you know, they're able to tell that tadlis happened. When you see someone called al-Kufi, the man from Kufa, and you see that in the chain of narration, the person above him is Abu Hanifa's teacher, and the person below him is Abu Hanifa's student. They obviously know that the person called al-Kufi is Abu Hanifa. So in many cases, the scholars are able to find out whether tadlis happened or not. Very common for them to find out. Sometimes they don't, but it's very few. But the fact of the matter remains is that most scholars said that this was something haram, and they reprimanded anyone who did this. Another way to do this, tadlis al-shuyukh, is for a scholar to say, a man who I rely upon told me. And I think Shafi'i does this. Sometimes you will have a teacher who you know is reliable, you know he's trustworthy, you know he's of good religion, but you also know that there are incorrect rumors spreading about him. And so if you narrate a hadith from him, it might be rejected because of those rumors. But you know he's reliable, and so you say, حدثني من لا أتهمه. He spoke to me that who I do not doubt his sincerity or his truthfulness. Or حدثني ثقة. They say a thiqa spoke to me, meaning a trustworthy person spoke to me. This is also quite common, and you can see it quite often in certain ahadith, even though whether or not they later call these ahadith weak, that's a different matter. The fact of the matter is it was very common and it exists in the books a lot. And those are the two types of tadlis. Trying to see if we have time for al-maqlub, or if we should end here. Like, okay, I think we have time to do these next two. وما يخالف ثقة به الملا فالشاذ والمقلوب قسمان تلا. A hadith that is shadh, anomalous. We spoke about this in the first lesson when we mentioned a sahih hadith. We said that a sahih hadith, from its conditions, is that it does not contain shudud. It does not contain an anomaly. And shudud is when Everyone in the chain is reliable. Everyone in the chain is trustworthy. There's nothing wrong with the narrators. However, it seems to contradict something that is stronger than it. You have five chains of narration saying one thing, and then you have another chain of narration, which is also reliable, but it's saying something that seems to be mutually exclusive, such as five people narrating that Umar radiallahu anhu was killed in this year, and then you have someone narrating something completely different. He gives a different year. Now all six people are reliable, but the last person, the sixth person, is contradicting the other five people. It's anomalous. We don't know why this is happening, but we know it's an anomaly. We know, so either he made a mistake, either he's confusing a different event, but there's something wrong, and so we don't accept this hadith. We call it shadh. We call it anomalous. And this is exclusively for when a reliable narrator contradicts a stronger reliable narrator. If a weak narrator contradicts a strong narrator, then we don't call it shadh. It's rejected, the hadith. This shadh is only when a reliable narrator contradicts someone who is stronger and more reliable than him. We call that a shadh. And we already mentioned it in the first lesson. The next one is al-maqlub. Wal-maqlubu qismani tala. Al-maqlub is two categories. Ibdalu rawin ma birawin. So there's two types. The first one is exchanging a narrator for one narrator. So if I have a chain of narration of five people, and one of them is weak, I purposely change it for someone else. This could be called a fabrication. It could be not. Usually it's fabricated. It's called fabrication, and it's haram in either way, according to such muhaddithin like Zainuddin al-Iraqi. Sometimes they would know their sheikh, their teacher, is unreliable, and so they change it for someone else. This is called maqlub. Maqlub means flipped. Even though here it's translated as switched, it means flipped. قلب شيئا بشيء or شيئا على شيء. Another form of maqlub is to change the chain of narration entirely. So it's not just changing one person, it's changing the chain of narration entirely. So for example, I'm learning hadith and I'm going to all these scholars and I have chains of narrations to all of them. Some of them are strong, some of them are weak. I find a strong one and I attribute all the texts of the hadith, so the actual narrations themselves, not the chains of narration. I attribute all the narrations to this one strong chain of narration. And by doing that, I'm basically making sure that these hadith are accepted because they're all attributed to this strong chain of narration. This is another form of maqlub. And as said, it's something that is rejected. Most muhaddithin say that this is something unacceptable. Like Zainuddin al-Iraqi, he says this is haram. Al-Imam al-Bukhari, once when he went to Baghdad, they tested him with this. Some of the people there, they tested him. They brought a hadith maqluba. So they brought a hadith which they knew. They gathered between themselves and they brought a hadith which they knew, and they started switching the chains of narration, and they narrated these hadith to him. And then Imam al-Bukhari corrected the chains of narrations for each hadith they mentioned. And based on the story, which is narrated by Khatib, the famous Baghdadi muhaddith. According to the story, basically that's when the people of Baghdad knew al-Imam al-Bukhari's value. When they gave him a bunch of ahadith, I don't remember the exact number. It was many ahadith they narrated to him, and they purposely changed specific words. They purposely changed one text with another chain of narration, and they flipped the chains of narrations, and they would change one narrator from the entire chain. And Imam Bukhari, he would hear the hadith from them. One of them would say the hadith, and he would reply of what the correct hadith was. And then the other person would give him the incorrect hadith, and he would reply of what the correct hadith was. So each time he would be fixing the text and fixing the chain of narration and any mistake that they made. And he did this flawlessly. He did this for every single one. He didn't make a single mistake. He was able to correct every single hadith. And that's how the people of Baghdad, according to Al-Khatib, knew the value of Al-Imam al-Bukhari. And that's all we have time for today. Next time we'll continue with Al-Fard, line 23. Anyone has any questions about what we talked about, now would be the time. Sheikh, you good? Yeah, I'm good. I just talked a lot. I'm not going too fast for everyone, am I? This was intended to be intensive. It was intended to uh, be quick instead of uh, going into detail about one type of hadith each day. This is supposed to be quick. It's supposed to just get everything out on the table to prepare for next levels, which are will be more slower. So yeah, I hope it's not too fast for anyone. طيب. You seem tired today, innit? Yeah, no support today, unfortunately. طيب. I don't think anyone has any questions. As always, if you have questions later on, you can ask in the group chat or you can personally message me. Jazakumullah khairan all for coming. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in.